people who understand how to shape the narrative as opposed to always reacting. So I love what you said, and thank you. That just provoked me. And yes, Bryan, we need attorneys like
Guys,
you.
you know, I always tell my clients the only thing worse than your attorney is the other person's attorney. I'm going to push some people down out of speaker roles that haven't spoken in a while, and I'm going to call on Leor next. Go.
Hey, so I just had a quick question and kind of following up to Kalman's third question from earlier. But in regards to this rise of radicalism throughout the West, is it safe to say that, like the security agencies of the world, whether it be NSA, Homeland Security, MI5, is it safe to say like they're doing their jobs, they're working overtime? Or is there a possibility they're just saying this will all blow over?
So I would imagine it's a great question. I would imagine if you asked the same question of every speaker up here on this panel, you get a different answer. My answer, having served off and on 16 years in federal intelligence and law enforcement positions, is that the vast majority of the CIA, FBI, DOD, Department of Justice people that I've ever known have been 100% honorable public servants dedicated to doing the right thing. Period. Full stop. That said, the last, I don't know, 8 years has made me question a lot of things, particularly about the FBI. And now I'm going to announce my bias. The CIA hates the FBI and vice versa. So take that for what it's worth. Hatfields and McCoys. But we're in the United States. We're in a weird time. I think civil servants have become much more politicized, and I think it's everyone's fault and no one's fault. It's not the deep state. It's not the anti-Trumpers. It's not the anti-Democrats. It's everyone has become so energized and triggered and partisan that it's a mess. So you're right to worry, but I don't think you're right to worry in only one direction. How about that? Sphinx, we haven't heard from you. Go.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi, Monica. I missed you this weekend, seeing you around. I know you were at the thing. Your spot was empty in the spaces. Um, I wanted to just say a couple things. First, when I first entered the space, uh, I mentioned a couple uh, ex personalities being thrown around and how they sort of propagate this propaganda. And I want to just say, I think each of us, right, needs to be uh, more responsible here because, when somebody speaks, I go and I vet them. And especially when I say vet, I don't mean like go like international, like online search. I mean, I just look at their profile very quickly. Does it make sense? One of these people, for instance, I mean, this person apparently has done every single thing a human being can possibly do, and founded a bank, and da 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 da, and is probably not even 40. Like it doesn't make sense. A lot of these times, these bios don't make sense, and so I don't really value, like I don't believe half the stuff these people say, to be honest, because you know, like I use the name here, I use Sphinx here, but I've been doxxed since day one, right? Like Monica's name is out there, like Bryan, your name's out there. A lot of these people, like I could start another account tomorrow and say that I'm the, executive director of this $500 million fund and just start speaking, and it's ridiculous. No one can verify it. So I think that's important. And I really make people earn um, earn my not trust, not just trust, but my ear. right? My ear, because there's a lot of nonsense going around, and it all goes back to, well, this is my background, right? And a lot of people write Newsweek, blah blah blah, and I'm like, really, I can't go do a name search because you're anonymous to see an article, the article from Newsweek. So this is I want people to understand, at some level we need to be wiser here. We need to be more
You're
responsible.
you're 100% right, Sphinx. And when I do the real space tomorrow, which I hope all of you will attend, I'm going to call out people's affiliations. Now, do I actually think that someone who's a FSB or GRU or Ukrainian or, Syrian intelligence officer is going to say that they are? I don't. But I can tell a lot by the way they answer about what their affiliation is. So I'm going to call that out. But in the meantime, in this drunken late night space that I drag Monica and Tom and everyone into, just apply common sense. I mean, if someone is saying something that doesn't add up to what their public persona is, that's a question mark. And you better be running that shit down. And Dan, I'm looking at you. I know you don't have your hand raised, but I know tomorrow night you want to talk about some Iranian issues. I'm not going to do that tomorrow night because I want to keep it confined to the matters at hand. But if you want to talk about it tonight, I will invite you to do so. And meanwhile, we're going to Adi. No, sorry, we're going to Joe because Joe hasn't spoken. Joe Adam, go.
Hi, good evening, Brian. Thanks for the opportunity. I was, in fact, the last time you brought me up, I was on my laptop, so there wasn't the option to raise my hand, so I apologize. Um,
Yeah, that's a serious glitch. They got to fix that shit. Elon, if you're in here, fix it.
all right, so just a couple of questions. The first is about Saudi, and then I'll ask you about Canada. But I know Saudi is with the conflict and so on. They're the talk of the town. There's been a lot of discussion around what happened in Riyadh, the summit in Riyadh yesterday, and so on. But Brian, and you were with the CIA. I mean, you definitely have more intel on Saudi. I'm sure you must have worked on the Saudi files. Um, is there reason for us to be optimistic about Saudi's future when it comes to Middle East peace? And or what we're seeing, is it some kind of hogwash? I mean, can we trust MBS as a person? And I ask this because I'm trying. I want to try and do more research on Saudi. I mean, I grew up in the Middle East in Muscat, Oman. I mean, yeah, for 16 years I lived there. I mean, Saudi is definitely not the country it was back then. So, do you see these reforms and changes as being promising?
Hey, so Joe, great question. I just want to clarify something that hopefully any former intelligence officers or law enforcement people on here will say, which is I have not had a security clearance since 2007-ish. So I don't actually have any secret squirrel access, although I do know what's in Area 51 and it might be declassified very soon. But I do still maintain my skills and my training in intelligence analysis. And my current somewhat optimistic view, which I'm still holding on to, is that regardless of what was said at the Arab League the other day, and also look at what was said in the OIC, that the Saudis still want peace with Israel and peace with the United States, and they are going to still pursue it, which frankly is pretty breathtaking and is probably the biggest fuck you that they could possibly give to Iran. So if I were advising the Biden administration, which I'm not, I would say protect that at all costs. Now, listen, I was in, I got to be careful. I was present when Danny Pearl's widow was told about the sawing off of the head of Danny Pearl. So I understand why we might not want to deal with MBS with what he did with Khashoggi. But there's a bigger future here. And the bigger future is we can create a peace corridor from Saudi to Europe, and we can thwart the Chinese. And, would I like to get MBS into a U.S. prison for what he did? I would. But much more important is this peace deal. And I hope Israel and the United States are pursuing this like crazy, and I hope it succeeds.
Thanks, Brian. You
Rasha.
mentioned Khashoggi. Sorry, you mentioned about
Oh, go ahead.
Khashoggi.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify: is there any truth to the allegations that he was an alleged Muslim Brotherhood operative and also, again, allied with Qatar, who
I have
obviously
never,
was.
I personally have never seen any evidence of that. And I think of all the U.S. media outlets, the Wall Street Journal vets their people pretty well. So I don't give that a lot of credibility, but I can't rule it out. I don't know. I wasn't, I haven't seen those files. Rasha, go.
Yeah, Brian, before I leave, thank you so much. I just want to respond to Joe. Joe, I went through a lot this like over 3-4 months attending Arabic spaces, especially the Saudis. You can't imagine, guys, and I'm not kidding. This month exactly, most of the Saudi, if I don't want to give a percentage, but over maybe 70%, they were attacking Hamas, and they were against Hamas, and they really need to do peace with Israel. And I was shocked. And even the MBS right now, regardless all whatever before happened, right now they putting to target Muslim Brotherhood. Even there is a law inside Saudi Arabia right now. Anyone who has anything, linked to Muslim Brotherhood, organization, they wanna arrest him, and they're gonna start. They start a new foreign policy. I understand. I agree. Brian, he nailed it when it comes also with Iran and etc. But they are willing right now to also go back to the peace settlement for land and do two-state solution even for Palestine, Israel, and do. But the only things what I just want to do a little comment about Qatar. Believe it or not, even Saudi Arabia, when they return back to Qatar, but still the relationship between Qatar and Saudi is still not that much good, especially for Hamas. Most of the Saudi right now attacking Al Jazeera channels, attacking Qatar, and they said, hey, we're not can't afford it right now. Like if Qatar really want a peace in the Gulf state, they should kick out all the Hamas leaders and they punish it. But they are waiting for United States to take, like a very legal action, pressure action. Especially Biden administration was not that much good. I'm sorry to say this. By the way, I am Democrat, but I told you Trump administration was more better when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to Iran. Trump administration, they did sanctions on Houthi. Biden right away he revoked it since day one. And by Trump administration was more having more pressure and sanctions on Iran. And I think right now Biden administration is trying with Qatar to do a lobby for the hostages. But as soon as the hostages been released from Hamas, they should be very serious with Qatar and Iran. Period. Thank you.
No, I get you, and I don't disagree with most of what you said. By the way, I've moved some people down so I can bring more speakers up. Don't feel slighted. Raise your hand later. I'll bring you back up. I'm trying to look for people
Brian,
that we haven't heard from. So
And I will
let's
leave.
go
Thank
with.
you so much, Brian. Thank you, Monica. Thanks, Tom. Thank you
Brian,
very
could I
much.
ask you my question about Canada?
Yeah.
Or
Oh, hey, I love nothing better than a Canada question. Go ahead. Then we'll go to Alanea and Adi.
As- All right. So this is again in the context of the conflict. I'm sure you have your ears and eyes peeled on what's coming out of Canada, and I'm sure it's nothing good. But uh, so this was a news report that came out today, Brian, where apparently the largest Muslim organization here in Canada, called the Muslim Association of Canada, was found to have very uncomfortable ties with a Hamas front group. So, I mean, this is not the first time that MAC has been pulled up. They were pulled up in the past. And of course, their charity status was revoked, only to get there for a couple of years, and then they got it back. And now they are in trouble again. So this is something that the Canadian Revenue Agency is accusing them of. So they haven't taken them to court yet. So we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But this came out in the news. I know Mac has accused CRA of being Islamophobic and so on, and took them to court. And similarly, there have been other allegations done. I'm sure, I don't know if you're following the Cameron Ortiz case, the RCMP ex-director who was caught peddling Five Eyes secrets to some of our enemies. So during that case, there was a story that came out where apparently he sold some secrets to Hezbollah operatives as well. So
Joe,
I don't know what
I
your
got
thoughts
Joe.
are.
Got it, Joe. I got to ask you a question. Is the largest Muslim organization in Canada really called MOC?
Yes, Muslim Association of Canada.
Oh, oh wow. They
Right.
need Monica to consult with them on PR, my friend. Look, I don't mean to make light of it. The infiltration, and I choose my words carefully, of KGB inspired, resistance triggered Islamist organizations into the West is a real thing. And you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to believe that. You just have to look around and you just have to read what they're actually saying they're going to do. And so I don't really have a comment on the government of Canada. I mean, Trudeau's a good looking guy. I don't have any problem with him. But we gotta fucking grow up in the West. They're coming for us. It doesn't mean we have to be Islamophobic. Doesn't mean we have to have knee-jerk reactions. But like any other intelligence and national security threat for the last 150 years, we have to be realistic about it. And we can't allow, in my opinion, political correctness or wokeness or decolonization theory to stop us from seeing and confronting and defeating the national security threats that are right in front of us. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's all I got to say. Alanea, speak.
Hi, Brian. Thank you so much. I was actually trying to catch you during the day ask you a question. There
You
was
mean before I was drunk? Is that your point?
yeah, I'm joining you with my glass of milk now, so you're all good.
Well done.
Um, Somebody asked, I think, I'm paraphrasing, like if, under this hospital, this big hospital, there's no command center, what would happen? And your response was, that is impossible. Israel or the intelligence agencies would not put themselves into that position. They showed us, and that will be a big. Uh, I don't know if you said embarrassment or not, but you said that's not possible. But if you go back to the history, didn't that happen to us in the Iraqi war with all the intelligence agencies talking about mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction? How do you counter argue that?
Alanea, you have sailed your ship right into the harbor of my wheelhouse, my friend, and thank you for arriving here. What I actually said was, if it turn, and I'm not making light of it because it's a very serious thing, but sometimes I think humor is helpful. If it turns out that the command and control and military complex under that hospital does not exist, I said the first thing that will happen is I will invite Syrian Girl onto my space
Yeah, yes,
for
he
an
does.
hour
Yeah,
to
yep.
say whatever the hell she wants because that's how confident I am about the outcome. Point two, you got to use your common sense, people. The Israeli Defense Forces, with the eyes of the world on them, with the United States on a hair trigger to modulate our support for them, are not going to make it up. That video, that animation would not have been created and broadcast on international television unless there was a signals intelligence, a human intelligence, another source that corroborated everything that was in that because they would not risk the possibility that they were going to be proven wrong. Now, let's take your hypothetical. Suppose tomorrow dawns, or the next day dawns, or the next day dawns, and it turns out either that complex doesn't exist, or somehow Hamas has managed to destroy all the evidence that it exists. One, not going to happen. Two, that would not change the laws of war analysis about what the IDF did, because they were entitled, under the laws of war, to rely on whatever reasonable intelligence they had at the time that they struck the site of a military target. So let's suppose, I put this hypothetical out earlier in another space. Let's suppose that the Russian intelligence services had so thoroughly penetrated Mossad and Shin Bet that they had persuaded them that these complexes existed when they actually didn't exist. And don't misquote me out there. This is all recorded. I'm not saying that's what happened, but let's suppose that happened. If at the moment they struck the complex with proportional military force, the intelligence they had in front of them was persuasive and reasonable that it did exist, it's still not a war crime. And let me say one more thing. You don't have to leave your common sense at the door. There are videos put out by Hamas of how they use civilian infrastructure to hide their military targets. There are audio recordings that the IDF, at great peril, I'm sure, to their sources and methods, released, where they're talking about how they hide their military assets in hospitals because they think the IDF won't strike them. This is all evidence. I was a criminal prosecutor in the United States. You don't always have to have a videotape to get beyond a reasonable doubt. Sphinx, go.
Okay, my first question is, are you really drunk?
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay, because I was gonna say you're a high functioning drunk for real.
Well, my wife would tell you that.
Okay. The other the other thing I wanted to ask was, um, I am genuinely puzzled about this administration's response and relationship with Iran. And so I like to ask people who I think would have an intelligent guess or answer. What do you think the reasoning is? Because why are we appeasing the IRGC in the way that we are? I really don't understand it, and I've studied the geopolitics of the region, specifically Iran itself, quite a long time, and I cannot come up with a solution. I really cannot.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, Sphinx. Every day that goes by, I am moving more towards your position. I think of myself, and I think I've demonstrated over the last 40 years. I'm a militant, nonpartisan centrist. I vote based on who I think is most likely to protect my daughters from being killed in a terrorist attack. That's pretty much all I do. And I'll be transparent. I supported the Biden administration in the campaign because I felt like Trump, for a lot of the good things that he did, um, could veer us into authoritarianism. Apologies to all the Trumpers out there. However, at this point, with 1/5, I know, Monica, I know. Thank you for the thumbs down. I knew that was going to happen. However, with 1/5 of the combat power of the United States Navy sitting in the back and side yards of Iran, for us, the United States, to put up with many more of these pot shots without conducting a serious deterrent strike is not only bad policy, it's dangerous and it risks escalation. And the only plausible explanation that I'm holding on to, which maybe in a few days Monica will give me a thumbs up if I reverse myself on this, is that Israel and the United States at the highest levels of government have agreed upon when the most impactful moment for the U.S. to take a serious strike stand happens. But if too much more time goes on, I'm going to start calling out the Biden administration. You guys, if for anybody that's followed me, I'll call out anybody that I don't agree with. And what am I? I'm like one guy. I don't know anything, but I will call them out if they don't do the right thing soon. Because the worst thing that can happen, worse than never sending the Eisenhower carrier group and the Ford carrier group to the
Hey,
region.
Brian, you just muted your mic a little bit.
Maybe you did.
No, you did. You're moving around. You're getting all excited, and your mic is
Sorry,
moving with
sorry,
you.
sorry, 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 sorry. The worst thing the United States could do is to put those assets in the region and then allow Tehran and Beijing and Moscow to conclude that we will not use them. So mark my word, I will be calling them out soon. Ronan, I think you're next.
So, excuse me for just a moment. Have you relocated in your hotel room? Because you're tragically going in and out.
If you're using Bluetooth headphones, it's
Yeah.
probably the Bluetooth. If you
Yeah.
turn
Okay.
off the Bluetooth and you just put it on speaker, and I guarantee it'll be better. And even better than that, well, if you're the host, ordinarily I would say put it in airplane mode first and just use Wi-Fi so that it's not potentially switching back and forth. I used to work tech support.
Hey, is
So
that better? Is that better?
it is better.
Turned off the Bluetooth. Thank you. Ronan, go.
Thank you, Brian. So I totally agree with everything Brian said, except his optimism that we will see this soon. But it is really important to have such um, some action that actually speaks louder. So I wanted to get back briefly to the subject of propaganda and what we discussed before. So there are all kinds of people that we argue with or debate, and every one of them is different. So there are people like what Sphinx described, um, the people that look like somebody sent them, and they have a profile that they were bank this and refugee something that. The people like Habiba and Mr. Fafo that somebody sent them, and you're not gonna persuade them. They're not gonna dissuade them as long as their operators are operating them. They're gonna continue. And then there are people who are just dum-dums. Not much to do with them either. And the ones who are interesting are three other types. Some people are just kind of confused. Other people are grifters, and a really interesting group is the type of people who are just a little bit malevolent by nature, and they're waiting for someone to be down so that they can kick them. And this group of people, the only way to stop them and dissuade them is that they feel there is some risk of repercussions. And as long as they feel there are no repercussions, this is going to embolden them. They're going to just continue and continue. So the only strategy that is going to make these people tone down or shut up is that they feel you can discredit them, or you can embarrass them, or you can humiliate them, or you can call them out. And some of them, when it's not in spaces, when it's not just in conversation, then the biggest thing that we can do, and I'm not the person to advise on how to do this, but just an observation, it has to be done. There are all kinds of voices that need to be taken down. There are actual Hamas people organizing huge protests or demonstrations of power, and they need to be taken down. I'm not saying necessarily someone needs to assassinate them, but they need to be somehow diffused, somehow disabled, either by exposing them and deporting them or anything like that. Some journalists, we need to find the people that will expose their connections with Qatari money and Russian propaganda, and by only by exposing them, we're gonna stop hearing these voices. And there are a bunch of other people like that. And most of the problem we have in propaganda is not that people are being convinced or not being convinced. It's not on the narrative level. It's not on the logic level. It's on the level of flooding everything with noise and things that repeat all the time, so that even if nobody's would be convinced by them repeating 100 times, just the fact that they're so prevalent, it emboldens people to voice these opinions again and not be afraid of repercussions. Also,
Yeah.
in my personal opinion, kind of a psychological thing, I think some of these people actually, in the back of their mind, they have this feeling that maybe Israel is down, maybe it will disappear, and there is no need to be afraid of any repercussions or any retaliation. And we need to stop, in the spaces and places like this, stop echoing too much. I don't want to offend anyone, but not to say things that can sound or be interpreted as victimhood. Mourning is important, but it's not part of this public debate. And we need to promote more things that show some power and show some winning, some victories, and this will
Okay.
actually sway people in
Hey,
favor of.
hey, Ronan, I appreciate you. I appreciate all your points. And for my friends at the National Security Agency, he didn't really mean assassinate. He meant embarrass and take down and use humor to trash the ridiculousness on the other side. Ronan, I'm going to push you and a couple other people down so we can bring some more speakers up. But I appreciate you. Appreciate your point of view. Good to go. You've been waiting a while.
Oh, hi, thank you. No, yeah, and it's going 5:30 a.m. here in Dublin. So I just wanted to add a little on
You mean
the,
happy hour, right?
oh, totally, on the Qatar. Just a reminder that Qatar does divide one of the biggest gas fields with Iran. And the other thing is that all those terrorist groups have their political or PR offices in five-star hotels in Doha. Don't forget in the Afghanistan, uh, Taliban Badaha, I think, was in jail in Pakistan and flew from the jail to Doha, right? So I think it's important to remember and have this as the background scenario in the region and how each player puts their, let's say, their interests, and and the other thing as well that it's very important in this conflict, it's 40% of the oil supply to Israel is coming through Turkey, and Erdogan can close this at any moment. So there's a lot of other risks around the situation and how to keep UAE, Saudi Arabia, and others, and continue backing Abraham Accords and all that not to collapse. So, but it's just a quick background panorama, and I see you guys tomorrow.
Hey, good, a great points. And since you mentioned Erdogan, I have to say something that I profoundly wish will happen. And ideally, it'll happen tomorrow night in our space where I hope you guys will all join. I hope you all retweet the space because I want to get as many people in as we possibly can. The prevailing narrative in Western elite universities is decolonization. This is KGB 101. This is stuff that I studied when I was a young CIA officer in the early 1980s. This is nothing new, but somehow it has taken a foothold into many of our elite universities in the West. And I am spring loaded, ladies and gentlemen, for the next person who talks about the decolonization narrative to say, hey, wow, cool, like great theory. What about Ottoman Empire Part D? I'm just going to put that out there and I'm going to call on Nico. Go, Nico.
Thanks, Brian. I wasn't expecting you to give me the mic that fast. Appreciate it. I believe Spinks was the account. She asked a great question. Why is the Biden administration still working with the terrorist Islamic Republic Mullah regime, or enabling them, or helping them? I believe that was a question. Um, there is no concrete answer. However, based on the actions of the Biden administration, especially for the past year and a half with the Iranian revolution. Me, myself, as an Iranian American, when I see the Biden administration working with organizations such as NIAC and PAYA, and they're being funded by the terrorist Islamic Republic Mullah regime of Iran, they're, how should I say this?
Hey, Nico, I'm gonna 100% answer your question, but let me ask you a question. In 2009, 2010, when it appeared from the West to be significant uprising on the streets of Tehran against the regime, I was one of the people who spoke out and wrote op-eds against the Obama administration for not sufficiently supporting that movement. But I've had pushback from people, and maybe even some people that are in this space, who said, no, 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 Cunningham, you're wrong. Any evidence of Western support or Western interference would have undermined that movement. So, Nico and Palave, what do you say to that?
It depends. The people who said, or the people, or the person who said that to you, Brian, I will have to know what kind of a person they are. In other words, right? Who are they supporting within the Iranian revolution, right? What's their background, right? Are they a mullah regime agent, right? Because there's a lot of them, right? So it's a great question, Brian. You know, someone like of your caliber, but it also, for me to give you a better answer, I will have to know where it was. Does that make sense?
It does, and I don't know. Like, we have a person who's a strong supporter of our spaces, who really, 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 really wants to speak about all the internal political issues of Iran. And I've honestly, I don't like to be a censor, but I've been kind of pushing that back. And if you're in the space, you know who you are, because I don't know whether Western and U.S. quote unquote interference is helping or hurting, and I would love to know
Let me
that.
ask you this, Brian. So, as you were saying that, I was kind of going through the space up and down, see who's in here. Is that speaker a female?
Well, I don't like to call people out, but no.
Okay, then I don't know who it is. Man, I would love to speak to him if you want to bring him up. I love discussions.
Possibly, possibly,
Nico.
possibly tomorrow night. I don't want to get diverted on this right now.
N-
Mark, go.
I'll just quickly answer something that you mentioned my
Okay, go
name as
ahead. Go
well.
ahead. Go
My
ahead.
name as well. Yes, 2009, and then this is the part that Trump was complaining. Why did Obama allow 10,000 Iranian regime children enter U.S.? And yes, they entered all the universities, infiltrated it, and all the NGOs and think tanks in Washington D.C. And they implied to every politician in U.S. that, oh, getting listening to Iranian people is not the right thing. Listen to reformist agenda, and this is when Obama's term, this is what they went with, and they didn't listen to Iranian. Even the chanting on the streets on Iran was Obama, listen to us, not to them, and it was never translated properly, and we saw it in. This is how we are where we are right now, and right now Paya is a NIAC second version popping up, and this is who is giving advice to Biden administration. They were supporting the election in 2020, 2016 for Democrats, and this is what Democrats are doing. They're returning favor. And the article I put up there, they're again releasing money for the regime, and this is helping the regime. So this actually giving money, giving Iranians funds that's blocked to Iran regime, and that's infiltration, because you are against the people who are asking for their rights. And the more money you give to this regime, the more terrorism happens across Middle East and beyond. And all the way in US, we see them, they are infiltrating all the universities, all the NGOs, all the think tanks, and their president, evil president who executed thousands of people, Raisi, gets to come to New York, goes in UN and scolds the United States in the land of United States, which should
Pallavi,
not happen.
Pallavi,
Yeah.
I so completely and for the last 20 years feel your pain. And if I had my way, UN headquarters would be located somewhere else besides New York, and it would not be the United States that would be deciding who could come and who can go. The idea that the Iranian regime is the head of the human rights, whatever, I got corrected earlier, it's not the human rights guy, whatever the fuck it is a joke. And it testifies to the moral bankruptcy of the United Nations. So I feel you from 0 to 100. That said, if there is a United Nations and it is going to be located on the soil of some country, we kind of have to let everyone come in. And I don't agree with it. And I wish it were located somewhere else, but I think we don't have any option. Now, having said all of that, though, I would love to know what is the cost benefit analysis of the United States overtly supporting revolutionary movements in Iran? Do we help you guys or do we hurt you guys? Because I don't have the expertise to know that. And I want to come down on whatever side is most helpful to you.
I'll answer that question, Brian. With the current administration, the Biden administration, 1,000% no. However, if it was a Trump administration, then yes, because we saw what the Trump administration did to the terrorist Islamic Republic Mullah regime. Annihilated.
Yeah. No. Nico, I got you, and I'm totally good with Soleimani. But in terms of the street, the street in Tehran, is it better to have overt American support or not?
That's more like a tactical question, Brian, because I don't want to get into the whole thing of guerrilla warfare, militias, and whatnot. Going out in the streets empty-handed with your fist, rocks, and I don't know whatever else you could grab is not helpful towards a terrorist dictator regime. So if something could be done to help these young men in the streets of Iran in terms of fighting back this terrorist regime, and you could fill in the blank yourself, Brian, or anybody else, in that aspect, yes, it will help. Otherwise, I would say just stay out of it.
Okay, I appreciate you.
To add to that, I would say that our Crown Prince Royal Reza Pahlavi always says Iranian people need maximum support, maximum coverage in the media, maximum help they could get with medication and so on, and help to continue the protests. Because when they go out on the streets 3 months, 5 months, and they have no salary, they have nothing to do and go back to work. So maximum support for the people and maximum pressure on the government, and maximum pressure on the government. Don't let them come all this onto the international stages in the UN and all these events and blah blah blah, and they act like US is weak. I see Iran regime agenda people on the Twitter. They are posting that that, oh, America is weak, we can go to UN, America is weak, we can do this. So this is what like making us diaspora very upset, and that they come to international stage and they actually disrespect all the countries they're entering and nothing is being done. But how many Americans have gone to Iran past 44 years and said something about Iran and came back freely? None. And this is where we stand.
Yeah, yeah, you're totally right. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go to David, yes. Then I'm going to go to Kalman, and then I'm going to reset the stage because there's a bunch of requests of people that want to move up.
Hey,
Go ahead,
Oh,
Brian,
David.
I've not
Brian,
been up
just real
yet,
quick,
Brian.
Simon, I'm sorry, Brian, I just want to say you're doing a
Sorry.
great job with your spaces. You're a great host, and I really do appreciate the fact that when you think of, saying Iran, you clearly say Islamic Republic regime. Appreciate.
Sorry, Brian. I just wanted to point out you've not called on me yet.
Go ahead, Simon.
Sure. So I'm obviously not Iranian, but I couldn't help but make a quick comment about the previous thing. And I won't go into all my backstory and what I know about the region, but I have family history from way back. Anyway, I think overt support just gives the regime an excuse to keep the support of the waverers, right? Like there's a hardline group that are always going to support the regime. There's a youth-oriented reform group, and then there's a whole bunch of people in the middle. And my fear would be that if you're too overt supporting the reformers that want the mullahs out, as a Western power and as the US in particular, you give the regime propaganda ammunition to carry the bulk of people in the middle with them, not least because they've been subject to relentless propaganda about how awful America is since the 70s.
Simon, that is exactly what I worry about. I'm gonna put you down to listeners so I can bring someone else on speaker. But I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that. That is exactly what I'm worried about, and why there's an argument the U.S. should keep their mouth shut. Kalman and then Pahlavi.
Thank you, Brian, again. And thank everyone for being on this space. I think it gives us a lot of strength. I wanted to go, Brian, to something you touched on regarding the one of the hospitals. I keep on forgetting the names. They keep on mixing up by me. But Brian, and this is you said, if they find that, I don't know if you watched, I did DM you during the day to watch it, but the IDF spokesman had proven have proven today crazy evidence under a hospital that was not even on the radar so much. I never heard that name on the news, and I'm not sure why you're so spectic. Or I don't think you're spectic. I take that back. I think why you so given into that the Israeli intelligence don't have the right intel of what's going on, saying, oh, if they will find they still have the rights or don't have the rights. I mean, wasn't today a proven evidence, total horror of what they have doing, and just giving us more and more strength that the October 7th was a total terror attack?
Kalman, I think you're misreading me. And for those hundreds of people that are in this space that have never heard from me before, let me reset the conversation. I am a professional intelligence officer and law of war expert. And I will tell you, and I've put this out for 34 days now, and no Hamas propagandist has managed to put a dent in it, much less a hole in it. One, Hamas made offensive war on innocent civilians on October 7th, period, end of story. War crime. They acted outside a military chain of command, without uniforms, without showing their weapons. War crime. They took hostages. war crime. They raped, they murdered, they burned families, war crime. Footnote, for all of you Hamas propagandists that might be in here that want to debate the 40 beheaded babies, maybe pick like a better subject to talk about. Because whether you ripped them from their mother's womb and shot them point blank in the head or you beheaded them, doesn't fucking much matter. War crime. They took hostages, war crime. They took them across an international border, war crime. They used humans as shields, war crime. They hid their military command and control and their leadership under sensitive civilian sites like mosques and hospitals and schools, war crime. So, Kalman, I know you don't need to hear this, but there's a couple hundred people in this space that may need a little reset. Period. Full stop. We come to today. I have gone out for the last 34 days and said to tens of thousands of Hamas propagandists, show John Spencer one example of a suspected IDF war crime, and we will call them out for it, and it has not happened. Colin, I'm realizing now that I'm 3/4 of the way through my speech, and I don't even remember what the question was, but I hope I answered it.
I think you did answer it hypothetically, but I heard it already from
Yeah,
you
crisp
once or
it up, crisp
twice.
it up, crisp it up. Yeah.
Sorry. I heard it once or twice from you. I think I even heard it live that you're willing to stand by anything if there isn't any crimes over there. I just want to emphasize what I'm trying to clear was today's evidence from the
Oh,
IDF.
yeah. Yes, I got you. Yes, I got you. I'm sorry. I lost the thread in my speech, but it was a pretty fucking good speech, wasn't it, Monica and Tom? I lost the thread of it. But look, I'm going to say this again. I've said it 5 times today. We don't need to check our common sense at the door. Israel is in an existential fight. The United States is watching with all of our massive intelligence assets every single thing that Israel does. The idea that the IDF would go out on international television and produce animations and fly throughs based on declassified, I gotta believe, sensitive intelligence sources and methods when they could not back it up, not going to happen. If it happens tomorrow, next day, I will confess my error, but it is not going to happen. Tom, what's your thoughts?
Look, I think you're 100% on point, and there's no doubt. I think that there's another point here to be made, which is super important. Um, Dan Ariely, if you're familiar with him, he's a somewhat well-known social, psychological, economics professor out of the U.S. with an Israeli background. And as a mass psychologist, they've asked him this question: it's like, what do you think Israel should do to combat this propaganda war? And he said, look, you need to generate a lot of noise to counter the noise that they're generating. So what you should do is just post a lot of fake news and say this is fake. So kind of disclaim this is fake, but put out so much noise that it counters the amount of crap that they're putting out. And that way you still have the moral high ground because you're still saying, hey, this is fake, but just so you know, blah, blah, blah. But he's just talking about the volume, the volume of shit they post versus the volume of shit we post is basically putting us on the back foot. That's the point he was making. And I think I'm not sure, but I think he has a good point there, Brian. I just don't know exactly how to implement that because I don't know if putting up straight up fakes is a good idea, but there's something to be said about the volume.
No, it's a good point, Tom. I'm going to go to Pallavi. I'm going to hear from you. Then I'm going to move you down so I can move some people up. Go.
Okay, I think he meant the Shifa hospital that IDF is trying to help with sending incubators and stuff, and that's originally I came up to actually mention that Iranians are going in protests and holding up signs Hamas is ISIS, and protesters in UK attacked Iranian holding such sign, and this is what upsets us because Hamas is ISIS. They are only harm to their own people and the Israeli people. And right now, with all these protests, we don't see anybody around the world being against Hamas. All these protesters. That was one thing I came up to say. But the second thing, when the person, I think Simon mentioned about reformists, Iranians chanted in 2016, "Islah talab usul gara dige tamam majra." That means hardliner reformists, both of them are terrorists. Like they are all combined. They work under Khamenei. So there's no difference between hardliner and reformist. And the advisor team that's advising the think tank in US that's advising Biden administration, they are part of reformists. And this is what Iranian people rejected because they are just disguised a team of hardliners, and they're all related to each other. So we don't want any help for
Yeah.
reformists from the U.S. administration. And have a good night. Thank you for giving
Yeah,
me the time to speak.
Pallavi, really important point. So I'm old enough to remember when the Reagan administration thought there were moderates in Tehran they could negotiate with in the 1980s. So I totally feel you. I hope that the current administration is coming around to the position that they're not going to be fooled again. I'm not super optimistic about it, but just understand that there are hundreds of thousands of people in the United States that support the idea of a free Persian people emancipated from the Ayatollah's regime. I'm going to push you down only so I can bring someone else up, Pallavi, but thank you. And I'm going to go, Sean, you're next.
Thanks for having me, Brian. So I just wanted to respond in reference to how we kind of combat misinformation. Um, so right now, I'm sure everybody's seen that you've got the Jackson Hinkles of the world, so on and so forth. Everybody disputing the IDF Israel video that came out today about the Hamas tunnels. So the best way to combat that stuff is to obviously not use information that would be found on some typical like conservative video or news source. It's to look to journalists like myself or others who have information about. So in this case, Vice's Isabel Young in 2021 of May, they actually had exclusive access to a shaft. Just honestly, it looks exactly like that shaft, and Hamas tunnels. It's the one of the first posts on my page right now. If you want to go, I would appreciate if everybody retweet that. That is evidence of the not only the elevator shaft that Israel and the IDF has shown. That is evidence of Hamas tunnels. That is an exclusive given to Vice News. Vice News does not lean right by any means necessary.
Sean, hey,
Uh, mhm.
Sean. Is this in the nest? Can you put it in the nest?
If somebody wants, so I can't do it.
I don't know how to do it. Maybe Monica or Tom does, but let's get that in
Yeah,
the nest and
Monica.
we'll
Yeah,
push it
Monica.
out.
If you want to put that up there. So this is so I put a portion of it and then I linked the whole video so people can go watch it as well.
Hey, Sean,
Uh,
if you
yep.
listen, all you have to do now, they've made it very easy. You just simply, if it's in the form of a tweet, I'm assuming it is. If it is, you just click on it and then as if you're going to share it, and we will be at the very top of that share option and it'll go directly into the nest, or you are welcome to
Oh,
DM it to me.
Just put it up in
Also,
the
that
nest.
that just went into space. Okay, I didn't know how to do that. Thanks.
Adi, we see you. We're gonna get to you in a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah. So and then just being on the ground. So this week in my state, Arizona, we have like Rashida Tlaib that's coming in, right? they're being extremely cautious. I'm trying to find out if they're even going to let media in. There's a banquet that CARE's having, and then there's also there was an event that I thought was honestly just going to be outside, but this is looking like it's going to be inside. They're controlling, what's allowed in, who's allowed in. So I'm trying to find out if media can get in, whether or not I'm actually going to be able to even cover that. But misinformation, we have to handle it in a very responsible way. You can't let the emotions get the best of you. You have to use everything that you have at your disposal against them. When I started debunking the story that led to me working with a Spanish reporter of the of the Pedro Diaz story, which is a fake person that claimed to be fighting for Ukraine and then come over to be a private mercenary for Israel. That story was seen. I think we saw it over 40 million times by the usual suspects, right? With the biggest spaces, the biggest accounts, propped up the most by X, Twitter, and it didn't necessarily take a genius to use, the tools at our disposal, which would be AI, and our investigative knowledge to start investigating this. And I did this as an independent journalist, and then I had a Spanish journalist reach out to me to get more information. And as more information poured in, we then debunked more photos and more photos. And after that, the guy ended up deleting his entire social media history. And this is a guy that's been pretending to be a Ukrainian fighter for almost 2 years. So you can absolutely dispute misinformation, and you can fight this the right way. Unfortunately, there is misinformation on both sides. That is a reality. I mean, you're fighting a war on two sides, right? You're fighting the physical war, and you're fighting the misinformation war, the cyber warfare online. I'm a firm believer that right now I think the online cyber warfare is probably the most important of our lifetime that we're going to see for a while. This is where wars are going to be fought. They're going to be fought in places like this. So it is important that people join that fight. And if you have any other questions as far as how to get into investigative things and or anything like that, feel free to reach out and DM me. But other than that, Bryan, again, thanks for having me up. Everybody, please retweet that video because that's absolute proof. And enjoy the rest of your night, guys. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Sean. You are so right. And again, I don't want to be melodramatic, but I'd like to think that if there were, I don't know, I think there's 400 of us in here now. I'd like to think if there were hundreds or thousands of us in the 30s and 40s, maybe we could have made a difference. And even if we couldn't, we have to try. We have to try. We got to speak truth. We've gotten some people persuaded, and that is encouraging to me. And no better person to go to, and then I'm going to come back to Tom, than sunlight, because that's what we need. Sunlight, go.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk. And thank you so much for the title because this is the most important thing that we have to consider at this moment. Okay, just uh I just came across a video of the head of United Nations talking about Quran for forgiveness. I was born into this world due to the absurd laws of Islamic Republic. I was born a Muslim, having thoroughly studied the Quran, and it's clear how they encourage war, bloodshed, slavery. It's no wonder that these Marxists are turning to Quran for support. You know what? And do you know why? Because all these world leaders, Marxists, communists, whatever you call it, they need Islam because no other religious enslave its follower, turning them into consumer or satisfied with the bare minimum or blind follower. No other religions permit the merciless slaughter of its own follower like Islam does. Islam adherent can also be most effective terrorists in this world. The leftists seek a robot to dominate the world, not a human. Uh, you know what? That was pretty disgusting to see him talking about Quran to forgive all these terrorists and let us they come and do all this bloodshed around the world. And some other thing that I'm gonna just say because it's clearly it's my experience about the protest in support of Hamas that I witnessed. I'm here in California, United States. It left me with a sense of skepticism because the organized nature of this demonstration and the clear agenda they presented suggested they were not a spontaneous gathering of concerned citizens. Instead, it appeared that these individuals were partaking a well-planned show designed to,
Hold on. Sunlight, you're in California?
yeah,
Well, don't tell us your exact location, but what region of California are you in?
Northern California.
Okay, shocker. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh my God. And it appeared these individuals were in a well planned show designed to propagate the view of Hamas. On the contrary, a number of reports have surfaced indicating that many, because I have been talking with so many students at university, a number of reports have surfaced indicating that many of these individuals in support of that Hamas movement are suspected of being financially compensated for their effort. These reports suggest that these individuals are allegedly receiving payment of around $120 per hour in exchange for spreading all this propaganda about the history of Palestine, their supposed entitlement to the land, and the alleged crime committed by Jews. This raises doubt about the legitimacy of their cause and the credibility of their argument. You know
Hey,
what? Because
hey. Let me just make your point for you.
sure.
There are people who 3 months ago were pushing lifestyle brands or Diet Coke who are now promoting quote unquote Palestinian independence. There's no question about it.
Yes, I know that. You know what? Paid individuals may be more inclined to exaggerate, fabricate, or manipulate information to suit the agenda of those funding their activities. I don't know who, but somebody is funding them. Their financial involvement might be seen as a tool to manipulate public opinion and skew the narrative in favor of their cause. I don't know who, but this financial support and manipulation of emotion and the act of victimization has a long history within the certain belief system, particularly within the Islamic Republic, because I was born there. We can draw a parallel to the 1979 rebellion, grave mistake, the Iranian hostage crisis of 44 years ago, where students and experts abroad were funded by Russia or Democrats and exploited and brainwashed by Islamist actors to achieve their own agenda under the guise of like seeking justice, under the command of the belief. Terrorist belief and the justice slogan and all this propaganda, and now for God's sake same thing is happening. Those
Hey,
beliefs.
Sunlight, you're totally right. And this is what I cut my teeth on as a young CIA analyst was this whole KGB manipulated resistance movement. And so I hope you'll join us tomorrow night on our actual official space when I won't be drunk, but stick the landing. What's your main point?
You know what? This is all being planned. And same,
100%.
yeah, this is all being planned, and Hamas is terrorist. And they are there. Just look at their slogan, from river to sea, Palestine will be free. Go ahead and ask them which river, which sea you mean. They don't know that. They just got that agenda to propagate that slogan everywhere and put a face and just do a show. But we have lived that. We don't let the others to come and and just spread all these lies around. The
Yep.
ISIS, the Hamas is ISIS, and it should be eliminated from all over the world. It's not just about Israel, it's about
So
humanity now.
you're totally right. If somebody wants to go to my Twitter feed, you'll see that I have a little rhyme around River to the Sea, which I'm not going to repeat here, but you can find it. We're going to go Adi and then David. Yes.
Hey, Brian, your mic is doing that thing again. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Brian. Speaking of
I know. I was
drinking,
gonna
what do
say.
you
I think
drink,
he said
Brian?
my name, and I
Jump,
had
jump,
dropped out.
jump,
I, yes.
jump
Okay.
in. Adi,
All right.
then David.
I had dropped out because I had tech issues myself, so I was gonna say Jinx, and I was gonna come back in with a joke, because I appreciated what you said about humor, and I think it is absolutely possible, to be both humorous and factual at the same time. So I was gonna tell a joke. I like little wordy jokes. So why can't kleptomaniacs understand sarcasm? Just don't know.
It's lost on them.
because they're always taking things literally. So I came
Oh,
up. Yeah. I know there are others wanting to speak, so I'll try and be as concise as possible, and I'll go back to listening. But I appreciated something you said earlier, Bryan, as far as I came into this space. Actually, I believe you were talking about anthems and music and messaging and music and the power of music, and what we really need to get behind is this kind of emotional sense, right? So um, in the sense in
hey,
and to speak
hey,
also
Adi,
to
Adi,
yes,
sorry to interrupt, but
no, please interrupt.
you know that one of my co-hosts is Grammy nominated. Look it up.
Wonderful. So, I mean, I don't know how much any of us respect
It's not
education.
Tom, by the way.
I was just gonna say, I don't know how any of us respect education anymore, but I have a master's degree in music technology, and I've produced electronic music for 15 years in multiple platforms. And so I have a lot of experience with this, and there are a lot of factors as far as the music industry and media messaging and politics even and our whole generation, it feels like, has been um, taught to believe that we can't be political and we can't raise our voices. And I just think of musicians in history, who would roll over in their graves. So there's a lot to be said, I think, in terms of the power of music, of individual voices, of things that of generations, what we learn and what we don't learn, and how we change, how we affect positive change by making different kinds of decisions. And again, to end on a humorous note, I think about there's this really great meme that I saw recently that said, my generation had mosh pits, yours have safe spaces. We are not the same. Um, you know, and my generation, I've been thinking recently,
That's
you know,
good.
all
That is
all
so good.
teenagers throughout history think that their parents' generation is boring and that they don't understand anything, right? And so my generation, when I was a teenager, we were listening to Rage Against the Machine. And I think about some of these lyrics. I'm deep inside your children. They'll betray you in my name. No wonder our parents were worried, right? So I just like I'll land my
Well,
plane with this, that I just, I encourage the voices of our generation and the musicians to speak up in a way, to use their voices in a way that they speak to their own credibility, rather than people like who I formerly respected, Bjork, so much. And Bjork just made this like yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, I don't need to finish that
so
sentence.
good. So
Yeah.
so so good. So I see Tom's hand up and he's already declined co-hosting, so I'm sure he's moving out. But I'm gonna call on Tom next, but I just want to say two things about your point, which is so important. One is I'm so dating myself as an old white Episcopalian guy, but Jimmy Buffett has this song. We're the people our parents warned us about. That's point one. Point two is PJ O'Rourke, which Monica may remember, was a columnist for, I think, National Lampoon back in the 70s and 80s. And he wrote this whole long essay about how pissed off he was at the generation that was coming up in the 80s, the Michael P. Keaton, the yuppie generation, that they weren't challenging their forefathers and they weren't, active against the machine. And then he gets to the end of the article and he says, "Yeah, but you know what? They really are pissing me off. So I guess they're doing their job after all." Tom, speak.
Wait, Bryan. Before I forget again, I remembered. So, as far as being drunk tonight and not tomorrow, I had to say, and in the interest of humor, I was just messaging with Arm actually about drunk history and how there's something really amazing when you have experts and you allow them an opportunity to relax and to speak more casually without, and that's the intention of the thing, without fear of misusing one word or being overly PC. Because I don't want to rant. I want to reiterate what you said about decolonization and education. It's not just decolonization as a topic. It's also specific fields, and one of them being anthropology, right? And I realized at a certain point that it was like me versus an entire field, and I was going to fail. And so there are ways that we address this with humor, like in media, in music, in shows like Drunk History, and reasons. I mean, one of my degrees I did in Canada, mind you, and the other in the United States. So I also, in the year you said you stopped officially working in the capacity that you did, those were the years that I was being pursued because of my language skills. But it's
Yep.
just I'm just saying that there are many reasons, and this account that I have here I started when I was studying music technology separate from my accounts and what I was doing pardon me, as an individual musician, because because basically it's, you know, when you're an individual trying to do something significant, the world will squash you, or
Yep.
question your credibility, or try to do any number of things. And so there's so much, there's so many layers of complexity. And I think the more we can encourage people to use humor and facts, and bring back, you know, public discourse, and I think that the greatest enemy that we're facing really is apathy. And so how
Yep.
we can engage people in a real way that is authentic, that they can, you know, build trust through transparency in our actions, our thoughts, and our words without putting ourselves in harm. So those are the creative kind of constraints that I'm working.
So true, Adi. There's 380 plus people in here that I'm going to say this now in front of, and you guys can call me on it tomorrow night or whenever. There is so much truth in humor, and there's so much humor in truth that we can't not do it. And I'm not going to try. And Tom, and then Nico, speak.
By the way, I probably declined accidentally the co-host invite, so feel free to send it again if you need me. But the reason I wanted to come up right now, I want to talk about a little bit about the regional players in the theater of public opinion. So I think the voices that matter more on the geopolitical stage in this specific war are voices of the so-called moderate Arab countries that surround Israel. When I'm talking about Egypt, I'm talking about Jordan, and I'm even talking about Turkey, which Turkey has a claim or a stake. Who's the leader of the Sunni Arabs, right? It's Turkey, Saudi Arabia. They're kind of so, and they're moderates, right? So these three countries so far have been very vocal, at least in the way they speak. Maybe it's lip service for some, maybe not. But they're very vocal against Israel. And here's the kicker here. So I don't think you can move Turkey because Turkey is driven by it's a one-man show, and that one man drove the economy into the ground by refusing to raise interest rates, and now he has 70% inflation, and he has to push against Israel to create a tidal wave of public opinion to distract from his own people losing their pensions and the Turkish lira going to shit, and they're an import country, so God help them. So he's not going to budge. There's no amount of money you can offer him or aid to fix a systematically broken economy, which he broke. So I think Turkey is a lost cause. However, with Jordan and Egypt, and I'm going to make this point very quickly, there's a good chance to turn them around. And kind of counterintuitively, the way to
Hey,
turn
Tom,
Jordan and
Tom. What about Saudi Arabia in that mix?
Oh, Saudi Arabia is pro-Israel. Make no mistake about it. They've been best friends with Israel for 15 years. They've been coordinating on security issues. It's just about it's just not above ground yet. Look at the last Arab summit. They've blocked, and they're the leaders of that block of
Yep.
the UAE, Morocco, Bahrain. They basically said, nope, none of these four resolutions are passing. We're not going to block airspace. We're not going to block supplies. We're not going to threaten with oil embargoes. We're not going to close embassies. Nope. And that the handshake between Raisi and MBS was the only thing they got a photo of, which is meaningless. But Brian, I want your take on this also after I'm finished, and I've been a little bit long on this. I plan to be shorter. With Egypt and Jordan, they fear Hamas more than people understand, because you see, Hamas has potential to destabilize Jordan and Egypt even more than Jordan. Even though Egypt has a massive army, they have a secular president who hates the Muslim Brotherhood. But because Hamas has physical access to Egypt through tunnels, because Hamas has physical ties with ISIS, who's in the Sinai Peninsula, and Hamas has proven to work with ISIS in the past to cause mayhem in Egypt, including the assassination of the Attorney General in 2015 in Egypt. Hamas has a major, major potential to cause a lot of pain to a Sisi who is much less stable than people realize. So I have to give you a little bit background here to the audience. I'm sure, Brian, you know this. In 2017, Yahya Sinwar, the de facto leader of Hamas, don't look at the official titles. He's the guy. So he's the shot caller. He made a deal with the Sisi saying, look, we're not going to do anything to destabilize Egypt as long as you leave us alone and don't meddle in our business. And they shook hands on this. And so far, they've maintained this. But here's the crazy part. If Egypt sees that Hamas is over or close to being over, and Egypt is convinced that Hamas can no longer come back, they will speak up and they will speak the truth, and they will say everything that needs to be said. They will take in refugees. They will also participate in the day after policing and managing of Gaza temporarily. They will do all of this, and they will speak up about the atrocities of Hamas, but they will not do it until they're convinced that Hamas cannot come back from this. And what you need, the conclusion for me here is Assisi as a pragmatic, rational player. He's extremely rational. He's looking at this and saying, I'm not yet convinced. Sure, Israelis have the momentum, they have the initiative, but I'm not yet convinced that Hamas is finished.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, on one level, it's depressing because you want to think that countries analyze their national interests and their moral values and they act on that. But pragmatically, I'm sure I'm sure you're right that everyone in the region is waiting to see who is a likely winner. And number one on that list is Hezbollah. They are not going to expose their major offensive capability unless they think that they can actually turn the tide of war, which I don't think they can. So I completely agree with your analysis. I want to call on though Nico and then Elenia, and then I brought Truth up, and let's see what she has to say.
Brian, just real quick on a side note, you mentioned drinking. What are you drinking over there anyway? And please don't tell me margarita or sex on the beach. What are you drinking?
So, it's Monday night. I've been speaking at a software security conference, so you can't even imagine how boring that is. So I've had a couple of Maker's Mark bourbons, and now I'm working on a delightful Conundrum Red Blend from California.
You my
Let's see.
guy, Brian. Keyword bourbon all the way.
Hey, Nico, you know who else agrees with you? The two preeminent American political consultants from the last century, James Carville and Mary Madeline, who also drank bourbon. But go ahead.
Well, I'm done. I'm done. That was just it. Less than 10 seconds. Thank you. I don't know who the next speaker was. I don't.
I
think it
saw
was me.
Alanea. I might
Yeah,
be pronouncing it wrong. Go ahead.
yeah. Just a couple of points. I think I told that before in your spaces. I'm Turkish, not currently in Turkey. I reside in America for more than 30 years, but closely watch what this crazy guy Erdogan is doing. One of the reasons I left the country when he became the municipal um, president of Istanbul. But you have to think about a couple of things, right? So there is more than 6 million Syrian refugees that he has, and he is telling Europe, if you don't pay me X amount of billion every year, I will just release them through Egyptian through the sea or Black Sea to Europe, or through Greece to Europe. So Europe is like handcuffed with Turkey. As you know, America has a couple of bases there, including nuclear bombs,
Yeah,
and
which
also
in Sirleaf got sort of rioted the other day, right?
it was not Erdogan's party. It was the minority party arranged that. A very more far conservative Islamic party than him, if you can believe that, actually organized that. At the end of the day, so the American bases, as I said, and then the third thing is, it's a geopolitic, the place that Turkey is in with the Bosphorus, which is the only kind of waterway for Russia to bring his navy down to Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean. So it is an important element for Europe and US at the end of the day. And I think the solution is just to find a way to get rid of this guy, which only gets around 51, 52% of the votes in Turkey. So we just need to find a way to get rid of him. That's it.
Yeah, it's a good point, LNA. I'm going to push a few people down so we can get some new speakers up. But I've said this before earlier tonight. I can't wait until the moment it's going to happen tomorrow or it's going to happen the next day when the ivory tower, elite university, American or British academics start talking about decolonization. And I can say, what about the Ottoman Empire Part 2? I can't wait for that. Arm Ukraine, go.
Sorry, Brian. Can I make a very quick comment for you?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Before I go,
go,
and
go,
I
go,
will go
go.
down,
Yeah.
and I will go down. Just for you to, equip in your Twitter wars tomorrow in different spaces that you go, there are a lot of discussions about, even the pro-Israeli people were saying the videos from IDF about the tunnels that they showed today underneath that hospital is not enough. And they need reporters, they need to see the real tunnel, etc. Actually, CNN had an embedded reporter with IDF, and they went through the house, the tunnel, and then the basement of that hospital today. And he said he was talking what he saw, and he kind of accepted everything that IDF was showing in that video. So we
Yeah.
should be equipped with that.
Oh, Nair, great, great, great point. I've been saying it for 20 days. The Hamas propagandists will never get it from them, but they're going to owe us a lot of apologies when the video comes out. It always comes out eventually. The IDF was not making up those animations, they were based on intelligence. And tomorrow, the next day, the truth is going to be out. And I appreciate you, Arm Ukraine, speak.
So this is the third space event today that this has come up. So apparently we're onto something. As for specifically how to combat the sheer volume of disinformation and misinformation coming from the other side online, there are generally two sides of this. I work in online marketing, so this is kind of one of the things I talk about the most. But the first side of the equation is pretty simple. Most people on our side are not part of this part of the equation. It's that tiny sliver of accounts on Twitter that get the vast majority of attention. And that is something not to really discuss here, I don't think, because most people listening it's not relevant to. But we need to consistently produce more and better content, host spaces like this, try to work together a bit more, nurture, engage, and grow our follower bases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the other side of the equation is the thing that I don't hear almost ever, maybe 1/100th as much as we need it to be out there, and it involves social media literacy and what exactly we can do as just people on this side that want to see less of their stuff be seen to the convincible population that hasn't already made a decision on what side to be on, and how to show more of what we do want them to see. And we can get into the details if you want to, but the actions that we all need to get into the habit of are actually pretty simple. And it just involves liking a lot more, retweeting a lot more, commenting a lot more, clicking on things a lot more. And when you see, rude, bad, troll, bigoted people, do not engage with them, mute and block them.
Hey, so Arm Ukraine, let me pull the thread on that a little bit. So I get
Sure.
the social media algorithm points that you're making, and I don't have any expertise to disagree with them. But don't you think that if you're in a massive room with, 1,000, 10,000, 30,000 people, there's a certain number of people you can still persuade?
Sure. I mean, I'm confused. Did I say something that conflicts with that? I didn't mean to.
No, I might have misunderstood you. I thought you were saying that, you just should disengage with people that disagree with you, but I might have misheard you.
I mean, what you do is, I'm not so much concerned with people who disagree with us. The people that I'm talking about muting and blocking are, trolls that just come in and comment and just spew bile, or Jackson Hinkle type people. There's the reason that Jackson Hinkle blew up, and I think part of the reason why he's dropping currently, although he's still really, getting way too much attention, is because there are a lot of people that have just muted and blocked him. And so every time that you go into a Jackson Hinkle tweet, every time you click on it, actually, that helps them a little bit. Every time you comment, that helps them a lot more. Every time you quote tweet, you help him a lot.
Well, that's the problem. That's
The algorithm does not care whether you're retweeting
yes,
him because you
exactly.
like or dislike. All it cares about is that this is driving attention, so show it to more
Yep.
people. So if you don't want to do that, which is the goal, then if you're going to do anything, do not go past just clicking on it to looking at it. If you have to quote it, then just take a screenshot and then tweet that quote, the screenshot out and talk about it.
Hey, Army
I would
Crane, and
recommend
then
not
we're
doing
gonna
that
go
either.
to Cleo, and then we're gonna go to Zoka. But what about like reposting something and putting his handle in it and calling it out? Is that bad too?
One thing that I'm not entirely clear about is whether or not just having someone's, the at their username, they're tagging them in a tweet. I'm not sure if that drives very much on the algorithm. I know on the SEO side of things, search engine optimization, that's actually my kind of specialty. Even mentioning someone's name on a website actually has a very small beneficial help to their website on Google. But I don't think that's true with Twitter.
Okay, Army Crane,
tag him.
Army Crane. Come back tomorrow night to our space, and right now we're going to go to Cleo and then Zoka. Cleo, go.
Hi. I wanted to ask Tom a question about Egypt and his mentioning that if Hamas is completely brought low, that they would step forward. I'm wondering if that would require also that the Qatari or the Hamas leadership that are in Qatar have to go in some way, or would those just be seen as like rootless because all of Hamas in Gaza was gone? And if they, I don't know what, I assume that Qatar doesn't have an extradition treaty, but if you know of any way that they would be able to get them out, that would be cool to know too. Thank you.
So that's a great question, actually. Just as a side note, if you go back in history, all the way to the Munich Israeli sportsmen that were killed by terrorists, you will find that the Israel usually does not forget, and they may take some time, but they get to all of them, even if they're hiding elsewhere. But that's a side note. You asked a very important geopolitical question, and my 2 cents on this are: you cannot look. Hamas basically is a theological, religious-based resistance organization, right? I don't think rooting out the idea or killing every single leader from the political wing is what Israel needs to do to crumble Hamas. What the threshold point in which Hamas is no longer effective is what we're looking at. So disarm, take apart the organizational ability, take apart the administrative ability, and basically make it irrelevant in the life of Gaza. At this point, the political wing, Khalid Mashal, and all these other guys who are in Qatar and in Turkey, as you mentioned, they become leaders of nothing. So essentially, they're just the head of a non-existing body. I think that once we're already seeing it. Yesterday, we saw looting. Civilians were looting Hamas bases for food and for resources. You have to understand that Hamas is ruling with an iron fist in Gaza. If you do it in a normal time, you die. Hamas has been very ruthless to Gazans. They're looting, they're leaving places where Hamas told them to stay put, they're fleeing. So Hamas is losing grip. I think what Egypt is looking at is that when the people of Gaza basically have said, well, Hamas is no longer relevant, and they're unable to cause any serious hurt from an organizational standpoint. I don't think Israel needs to kill every single Hamas leader in Qatar, in Turkey, or anywhere else. I don't think it's also feasible.
All right.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Cleo, then
Mhm.
Zoka, then Truth. Go.
Okay, is that my turn?
Cleo, yeah, go.
Oh, I just asked Tom a question, which he answered. I don't have anything else unless somebody else wants to contribute on that question, but I could tell that he was probably going to be the one to answer it. When I asked about the Hamas leadership in Qatar. So thank you.
You're welcome, Cleo. Thank you so much.
Just very briefly, the operation to secure Adolf Eichmann in Argentina. Just look that up if you want to understand how Israel thinks about these kinds of operations. And that was a long time ago, but it's still how they think about it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Simon. And I'm gonna throw up another movie plug here called Conspiracy. You can find it on IMDb with Kenneth Branagh and Stanley Tucci. It's about the Wannsee Protocol meeting that laid out the final solution. Check it out. It's not a whimsical summer romp, but it's important to know. Zoka, go.
Thank you very much. I wanted just mention that if you consider current, status of Hezbollah and Islamic Republic, especially the supreme leader of Islamic Republic, about what is going and what is happening for Hamas, we should note to an important difference between Shia and Sunni religions. We should note that in Shia, cheating or lying, if it helps you to put your ideology in a superior position, that is a good thing, and there is no matter for cheating or lying. And that is exactly the current policy of Hezbollah and the Islamic Republic supreme leader. And I think that there is a propaganda around that Hezbollah and Islamic Republic denying their clear role and participation in what happened on October 7 inside Israel. And I think we should note to the difference between Shia and Sunni in announcing their clear status about what is happening and what is going. Thank you so much.
Hey, Zoka, so not to make light of your very important point, but I will simply say that law school in America teaches a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. But on a more serious note, I think this whole narrative in the West, and I've seen this since the original, what in America we would call the Gulf War in 1991, this whole idea of Sunni versus Shia split has been massively misunderstood. And my sense is that when those two sides think they have a common enemy, they will unite and they will fight, and they'll sort out the religious distinctions later. But Pearl, what do you have to say?
Hello. Well, first of all, congratulations on the great spaces. As a beta tester for Discovery, I just wanted to say it's quite refreshing having you on. I look forward to your podcast I just learned about. And I wanted to give you one tip, and then I have one question. And the tip would be for better discovery to hashtag any word in your title. Like, for instance, the ugly truth about, you could do a hashtag Israel, hashtag Hamas, hashtag propaganda war, and you would get better discovery. Did that make sense so far?
Hey, Pearl, thanks for that. I will say I have received a lot of conflicting advice, and I'd be curious to what my pal Tom up top has to
Oh,
say
okay.
about hashtags. Some people think hashtags are bollocks, as my British friends would say. I
You
don't
know,
know.
as a
I welcome
beta
the
tester
debate.
for Discovery, it really does work. If you could pick, like, if there's one
Okay.
topic especially that's trending on Twitter X, you'll get more views. But that's up to you. That's not up to me. Now I'll go into my question. Okay.
Appreciate
Wait,
you.
can I respond to
Oh,
just that
sure.
specific thing for about 10 seconds? Okay. So hashtags are one of those weird things where 99.9% of the time they do nothing. But then that 0.01% of the time, you can get 100,000 views if that hashtag gets a lot of people clicking on it and your tweet ends up near the top of that feed. So
Uh-oh, I lost sound.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we lost Army Crane.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead. Go ahead on the hashtag
Oh,
controversy because
was
I'm very
Arm,
curious.
did I overspeak Arm or was he losing sound?
I think you got a phone call. That's what seems to
Okay,
be
my
the.
question's
No,
going to
just
be
go
real
ahead.
quick. So that's all I had on the hashtag deal, unless somebody else wanted to chime in on that. I
No,
do.
it's a mystery. Like some people say it's worthless, and some people say it's
Well,
gold. I don't know.
well, I would try it for a good 3 spaces. It can't hurt. It's still going to say the same title. It'll just have like a hashtag in front of the words you want to highlight. But I have a serious question, and you may not, or you may be the right one that could help on this. So, regarding lone wolves in America, um,
Yep.
I happen to be somebody involved in a situation like that, and I thought we had a see something, say something ordeal, like not ordeal, but like it was just known that see something, say something. But not only that, but I caught the person and I was in a physical altercation. With that being said, fire department came out, law enforcement came out, and they were shocked I was even able to physically do what I did. They had to restrain him in the hospital. I'm making a very long story short. And then I find out weeks later that some weird organization got him out of jail without my turn in court to speak about the violence that he did on multiple people, including the reason why I physically got involved is he was charging at a woman with a baby in hand. Okay, so what my question is when I went to get the FOIA, they changed all the paperwork and put unidentified female instead of my government name. And then as I did my own investigation, they did admit to me what went on. They get Yes.
Pearl. I'm gonna stop you here.
Are you the wrong one?
DM me, DM me with the facts of the case. I'll look into it. I don't think you want to give it
Oh,
away any
okay,
more
okay.
information on
The
here.
only thing is,
Yeah.
is I'm following you, but I think the only way DMs work is if you follow me back, if you don't mind. I think that's the only way to
Oh
open
yeah,
up.
yeah. That was a big mistake on my part. I have now followed you back.
Okay.
Truth, and then Tom, and then Sunlight.
I appreciate your help, you all. I love your show. I can't wait for the podcast. I will talk to you later. Thank you.
Truth, Tom, Sunlight.
Oh, hi, Brian. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the mic. Um, it's a very good topic, and I just noticed that, Brian, you said that you are an intelligence in war and also a CIA agent. It is really interesting. Um, the point is that Western countries keep talking about proxies, like including Hamas, Al Qaeda, ISIS, Houthis, Hezbollah. And you guys keep talking about signs and symptoms of a malignant cancer, trying to heal it, but it's not a permanent remedy. For years, Iranian regime of Iran clearly stated that they will eradicate Israel from the earth. They funded, they trained, they equipped terrorism members, the external corps of IRGC to reach that goal, And they believe, because the Shia ideology is that they have a savior, Mahdi, that they present in the world in Muslim countries when Israel is destroyed and eradicated from the world. And for that purpose and for that idea, the world is watching the October 7th Israel massacre and the recent uprising of Iranian. It was another massacre, but it's hidden because of political hands behind it. So we have a representative, the Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, who recently visited Israel and to break that taboo of anti-Semitism and bring the message of a new peace era for the Middle East. And the only thing that Western countries can do, as he stated several times, it's supporting the maximum support of Iranian and maximum pressure on the regime. But they didn't. It was just shallow words. And I think it's really tiring to sit and talk forever but do nothing, and it's time to take the action. Well, we loudly shouted it within these recent years that Iranians were kidnapped, murdered inside Iran, and we just try to give that message to the whole world, or especially Western leaders that do not support the head of the snake, which is in Iran. It's in Tehran. They support these proxies, and there is evidence. IDF in all the videos released in these recent weeks, they show that this is the main problem. So instead, Biden could really stand with Iranian, but he just rebutted the
Hey,
regime.
truth. I totally feel you. I said earlier that I wish we would have supported the uprising in Iran 10 years ago. What do you think we should be doing, the United States should be doing right now?
It's not whatever that I think. We have a representative, which is the Crown Prince of Iran, and he stated, he lobbied, he talked with the Western countries' leaders, and he mentioned that whatever you need to do is stand with Iranians with two things, two fundamental action: maximum pressure on the regime and maximum support of Iranians, which has its own details, which is really discussed. And I just, as a witness, I just want to tell you that in Trump administration, vice versa, this weak administration that we have now in U.S., he imposed punishing sanction. He listed IRGC in terrorist list, and he eliminated the core of this terrorism mafia, Qasem Soleimani, and he had
So,
the ban.
truth. Sorry, I just got to get to some other hands. You
Mhm.
think the Trump policy is better than the Biden policy,
Oh,
right?
of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you. I got you. Tom, and then Decado, then Nico, then Sunlight. Tom, go.
So, Brian, I want to talk a little bit about something that's kind of a part of. I want to stay on topic with misinformation and propaganda, and I want to explain something. I've been researching Islam pretty much my entire adult life, and as somebody who's of Russian descent, and I understand the psyops and war games Russians have
Yep.
invented, so I understand exactly what's happening. But you have to understand that there's a built-in parameter inside Islam, and my best friend is a Muslim, so not it's not against Islam specifically, but in the Muslim religion, there's this thing called taqiyya. Taqiyya means that it's okay to lie blatantly about anything in order to promote your religion and what you think is a just cause. So lying is forbidden in Islam, but if you're promoting your religion, then you can lie about anything. And I think this is like where you see these community notes on posts and dead babies from Syria and all this stuff. They don't care. When they get called out and exposed, they've already moved on to the next 10,000 misinformation posts that they posted. They're not in the business of being right. They're in the business of saying as much as possible to create, as coming together with the previous point,
creating
Yeah, it's
this
the
mass.
volume of chaos, right? The volume of
Yeah.
chaos.
Yep. Precisely. But this is I want people to understand when you see kind of a Muslim leader, like a religious leader, saying we like there's this thing right now in there's a big debate in Israel. There's a parliament member in Israel who's part of an Arabic party, who is now the moderate and the fan favorite, and he's walking around and he's saying how he condemns the Hamas and how blah 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 blah. And what people need to understand is like I'm not saying anything against him specifically, but when I see Muslim leaders talking about things like that, you always have to take it with a grain of salt because it's a built-in mechanic in the religion to lie to promote the ultimate goals, not to disclose what's the ultimate goal. And I'm going to give you an example, Brian, and you're going to love this. You remember Abbas Zaki, who was the former senior operator of the PLO and the Palestinian Authority back in the Oslo Accords?
Sure.
So Abbas Zaki is on record saying this. Check this out. In Arabic, by the way. Always listen to what they say in Arabic, not what they say in English. My good friend translated this for me. We all believe in the full Palestine. That's the river to the sea. That's basically a dog whistle for extension of Israel, right?
Yeah.
We know that 1967 borders is not defendable by Israel. So we go there first, peacefully, without revealing what is our actual end game. Just to give an example of how it's not specifically about the PLO or anybody else. When you're dealing with the Muslim world, you have to understand the culture. Do not
Yeah.
disrespect.
Well, and Tom, this is I'm a broken record now. This is the KGB playbook 101. It's page 1, page 2, page 20 of the KGB playbook. I don't know who thought of it first, but that's the playbook. I'm going to go to Decado and then Nico and then Sunlight. Decado, go.
Hello. So first of all, regarding what Tom was saying, absolutely on point, my friend. The differences between Shia Sunni ideology only come into play when, for example, the Islamic Republic wants to oppress a bunch of people in Sistan and Baluchistan, and they're Sunni, or in Kurdistan and they're Sunni. And for example, a year and I think 40 something days ago, um, the Islamic Republic went into Zahedan and butchered people on midst of Friday prayer, aka namaz, Friday namaz. And it's really interesting. They killed 100 people during one of the most sacred things in Islam, and the Islamic world said nothing, just silence. But today, when it comes to Palestine, they're like making an earthquake in the streets of the world with their movement and attacking people and whatnot. But anyways, another thing I wanted to mention is how these people work. You mentioned it a little bit. So they make frenzy of news so they can hide the truth between all of the different lies. So you're busy figuring out their lies and can't find the truth. Okay, I'm talking to a muted mic. The reason they did this with Hamas is very simple. In 1980, the only reason they were able to stand and maintain power was because of the Iran-Iraq War, which they made. And there's, history records of Khomeini doing things to provoke Saddam. And there is a book in which a memory of the ambassador of Iran in Iraq is mentioned. And the guy goes to Khomeini and says, "Stop poking him. He wants war. If you keep poking him, he's going to attack." And Khomeini says, "Get this guy the hell out of my sight and do not let him go back to Iraq." And regarding what Truth was saying, absolutely on point. The only way is maximum pressure, maximum support. Now, I don't know anything about US policies. And I personally think even Trump's policy could be better, but it was certainly better than Biden's. Um, But another thing is that the relationship between Iranians and Israelis go 3,000 years to 250 years back, 500 years back, and 2,500 years back, and uh, they were the only nation that were hearing us during, especially the past year, the Mahsa Amini revolution, Iran's national revolution, and now they're paying the price for the rest of the world not listening to us. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks so much for your contribution. So we're gonna just call on the hands that are up, and then we're gonna call this a night because for me it's 1:43 in the morning, and I know I don't even know what time zone it is for Tom or anybody else, but Nico and then Calvin and then Zoka, then we're done until tomorrow. Nico.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Spoke about the Iran Revolution. I'm not going to go back to that again. I'm going to circle back to the topic, the title. My question to you is, Brian, and I would like to know what you think in theory as far as bringing peace to the Middle East, between Palestine and Israel. What would be your game plan? Are you for a two-state solution, one-state solution, three-state solution? Like, what would be your game plan to bring peace between these two countries?
Yeah, it's it's obviously the $64,000 question, Nico.
I know. I just want to hear your thoughts
Yeah.
on
No,
this.
no, no. No, like I try to be very transparent about shit I know about and shit I don't know about. And I've served three different presidents who have crashed their presidencies on the rock to extend the metaphor of Middle East peace. So far be it from me to advise. But I think that there's a couple of things that are true that we're just going to all have to accept and reset our expectations. One, Hamas done. Their military capability is going to be destroyed. Hezbollah and Tehran have already cut them loose. They're done. They're over. I think also the Palestinian Authority, which was largely propped up and created originally by the KGB, is also over. I think what you're going to see after whatever happens in Gaza, and we can all pray that it's the most humane result that we can possibly have, is the geography is going to have to change. The Arab countries in the region, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, are going to have to finally, after all these years, step up and admit that they have a role in solving this problem too. And the borders are going to have to be redrawn, in my opinion, so that a democratic, uh, heterogeneous Israel can be assured that they cannot be surprised attacked again like they were on October 7th. Do I know what that looked like? No. It's foiled three presidents in my lifetime. But I think it's going to have to be creative thinking outside the box beyond the 67 borders. And all the Arab countries are going to have to step up. That's my view.
You know what makes this very tough as far as peace talks, Brian? Right.
Well, everything makes it tough. But go
Right,
ahead.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right, just two things real quick. I see the hands are up. Right. So this is nothing new as far as they're going at war, right? But if Yasser Arafat, if he couldn't bring peace, just imagine how difficult it would be for someone else to come and bring them
Oh,
peace.
my friend, you are dead right. I was the chief of staff to the CIA director during the Bill Clinton Yasser Arafat discussions. And I will tell you, this is not classified, it's in every single historical account. They gave Arafat 99.9% at least of what he wanted, and he walked away. And I don't know how to deal with that. Honestly, as a rational person, I don't know how to deal with that. If he wouldn't accept it, then that tells me one of two things. One, it's impossible, which I refuse to believe. Or two, You got to get someone in the leadership role who the Palestinians accept, who knows what the fuck they're doing. And I don't know who that is, but it's got to happen.
Brian,
Hey
not to
Tom, I've
depress you,
I've entirely
just very
lost
quickly.
control of this. Yeah, go ahead. I don't know who to call on next. You just call on someone, Tom.
The sunlight is next.
Brian, just before that, can I just respond to that with a little bit?
Yeah. Go ahead.
You gotta understand one thing though. The Islamic Republic and Hezbollah haven't cut them off. They do this thing all the time when they say one thing and do the other. So if you look at what they have been doing, they go in UN, vote for the two-state solution and ceasefire, and make a title in one of their own newspapers inside the country. It's called Kayhan, that the Islamic Republic won't go to war in favor of any other country, in behalf of any other country. And then they go around, and the next day, literally the next day, another of their proxies in Yemen, uh, you know, declares war against Israel. And the day after that, they sent a brigade of 5,000 people to Hezbollah to attack Israel from the northern borders. So
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is what
yeah,
they
yeah.
do. They go up
Yeah,
and down,
no,
up and down.
yeah, no. I totally agree with you. I understand that, but how does that affect the final peace process? Like, how should that be ignored? Should it be factored in? How do we deal with that?
It should be factored in. You see, you're dealing with an octopus, and the octopus's head, unfortunately, resides in the same city I am right now, in Tehran. Um, you, there is one simple solution to this: isolating this regime. If they have no money, if they are isolated diplomatically and financially, they can't lobby for their proxies. They
Okay.
can't pay
All
their
right.
proxies, and
Okay.
that will be done. And then you can go forward with the peace process. Because as long as they exist, they're gonna interfere left and right in every single goddamn way. Their
Okay.
lobby list
Okay.
is
Hang
so
on.
long that drives me nuts.
Okay, Decado, I respect your courage right now. I'm not going to ask you to say another word about where you are or any details, but I'm going to ask you and answer me in the most generic ways you can so that your words don't trigger any sort of collection by an intelligence service. What should the US do to support your people internally?
I put it in the nest. There's an interview with the crown prince. He puts it so beautifully that when I was watching it, I was like, I couldn't have put this better myself. And this is coming from a guy who's inside and seeing everything through the lens of someone from inside. We need tech support to be able to provide VPNs that work to people, because not everyone, A, has the same knowledge as I do and has the same access as I do. You're talking about people that have gone in the past 5 years from making $1,000 to $2,000 to 200 up to $500 max per month, and the price of living stays the same equivalent it was. The price of meat has been for the past 10 years, for you guys, 1 kilogram would be £2, the equivalent of $8 to $10 for £2. And what they have been making has decreased. So they can't exactly pay for VPNs. And putting the IRGC on that list and isolating the regime will not only choke the mullahs from funds from lobbying all over the world with their goddamn lobbies, and uh, they can also trigger the people inside to see that the world is supporting them and there is someone backing them, and then finishing this revolution with no cost for anyone else. Lives have been lost in Iran for decades now. 600 has died during the past year's protests, and we wanna pay. Not that we want to, but we have to pay that price, and we will. But my people need to see some support, not just empty words, as the crown prince said. Words are just words.
Okay, my
If there's no
friend.
action to them, they're not worth anything.
My friend, I feel you, and I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to work on it hopefully in a way that doesn't put any of you guys that are on the street in peril. I'm going to move to Kelvin
Could you
and
follow me
then.
back so I could DM you some things?
Oh, yeah. I'll follow you back. Then go to Kelvin. Go, Kelvin.
Brian, Sunlight's hand has been up a long time.
Okay,
All
that's
right.
good. Go there too.
Wait,
Can
I
I
have
talk
a
now?
as the acting co-host. Hold on 1 second. Let's make a rule. We want to be done by 2 a.m. So everybody gets 2.5 minutes going forward for Sunlight, then
That,
Zoka,
that's a good call, Tom.
and then we're done.
How do you get attention if you're on a desktop?
Okay, can I talk now?
Yeah, if you're on a
Yeah.
computer, it's tough. You got to go
It's
on a
my
phone, buddy.
turn.
Sorry.
It's Sunlight's turn, and then
Yeah,
Kelvin.
please let me
Sunlight, then
speak.
Kelvin, then Zoka, and then we're done.
Thank you so much. Since you were talking about
Oh
who's
man.
taking the most advantage of this, so let me connect some dots here and come up with my conclusion. So first and foremost, I second whatever True said and Dakota said about Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, because he is Iranian representative and he is the only opposition to this Islamic Republic terrorist regime, and Islamic Republic is a terror supporter and export the terrorists all around the world. So as he said, we have to put the maximum pressure on the regime. That means not financing them or expelling their diplomats, sanctioning their head, deporting, whatever they have, like diplomat or their kids or their proxies here, and such. And Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi much better than I say here. He can elaborate all of that, and so we can just negotiate with him about all this. So now let me talk about briefly about the logic, because what I'm seeing here in today's modern world, we can see the both extreme Islamist and secular Western, leftist, religious, and non-religious world are two sides of the same coin, a coin whose values is shedding of Jewish blood. Even if anti-Semitism seems far-fetched here in today's world, and we try to deny the wave of freedom of Palestine that has occurred among Arab and non-religious Jews, the truth is that we will see that more and more of it. So, careful within the framework and the identity of this radical ideology and their affiliated terrorist organization like Hamas, like Islamic Republic, Hezbollah, the popular mobilization word, it is well understood that they only see the freedom of the Palestine in the complete destruction of the Jews. In fact, the rallying point of all this terrorist organization is the ideal of the Palestine for freedom and expansion, not geographically, but in terms of the control of common political, religious, spiritual identity against Judaism, and that has been defined among them, among their religious teaching, whatever. An anti Jewish identity that has become a global propaganda now, hidden under the Jews of like fantasy human right and openly in the form of religious ideology. Um, and contrary to popular belief, it is not just an Arab or Muslim phenomena here. It is completely modern phenomena that has been greatly influenced by revolutionary ideology in Europe and has permeated into Arab intellectual and political activities, creating a link between Arab religious and also the non-religious people here. So, long story short, in a general sense, the insistence on continuing the war and encouraging Hamas terrorists to slaughter Jews is for extreme Islamists to spread Islam and commit genocide. And in the short term, for the others, like the neighbors, the Arab neighbors, to protect the borders and the land against the wave of war-torn, hungry, homeless, and possibly physically weak migrant, and of course terrorists. And in the long term, for economic like interest through arms sales, drugs like Captagon from Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, and then more destruction
Hey,
in the
Sunlight.
region.
Sunlight, can I ask you a question? Like, what region are you located in? Middle East, Europe, America? Where are you?
Uh, I said that before. I'm in United States.
Okay, and so you're observing all this stuff from the U.S., right?
Yes, yes, because I'm at university and I'm talking with all students and see where their agenda is coming from.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair
I
enough.
have do a
Fair
lot of
enough.
research about it. So more destruction and the in the region will bring them like opportunities for reconstruction in the future. Just look at the construction company in all around the Gaza. It's from Egypt. So this is all about it, and you have to be careful all about all this hidden agenda.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't mean to mute everyone. Let's go to Thufir, if I'm pronouncing that right. Thufir,
Uh,
go.
yes, sir. Good afternoon. Uh, well, good afternoon from Australia. So I guess it must be early morning your time. Um, I just want to sort of get your advice on a matter that we've been noticing quite a lot, particularly in Australia in the recent demonstrations in Sydney and Melbourne that were uh, calling back for the gas chambers and everything, and that essentially involves. Sort of something new, and that is quite a lot of North and West Africans amongst the population. Previously, when we had these issues, say in Australia or even in Europe, you had the Islamist or the Islamic sympathizers were predominantly Lebanese and Middle Eastern, but somehow it seems that the uh, the terrorism sympathizing sort of operations is now being outsourced to include Africa as well. And if you look at what is happening, for example, in Iran, there have been recently quite a lot of enclaves of Shiite fundamentalism that is being funded by the directly by the Khamenei's office in various parts of Africa, including Nigeria, Chad, Niger. Um, the IRGC has presence in Ethiopia, supplying weaponry in the Eritrean war, and and all of these locations and sort of happen to be near the deposits of uranium and other precious metals. Now, in your analysis and in your research, have you come across this sort of a thing whereby somehow, given the Abrahamic Accord at the time of President Trump, Iran is somehow trying to diversify its reliance on Middle East and somehow export its brand of Shiite Islamism to other parts of the world, including Africa?
So, Thufir, my words, not yours. What you're talking about is the Nazification of the natural resources of the remaining developed world. And it's, to me, as an intelligence analyst, crystal clear that the axis that runs from Tehran to Moscow to China are doing this exact thing. They're crossing the African continent, they're crossing the South Pacific with promises of economic prosperity as long as you're willing to accept authoritarianism and dictatorship. Are we on the same? Are we on the same wavelength or no, my friend?
I would say roughly between 200%. And that is because the Iranian Islamic Bank had identified that they are essentially looking at China and its method of expanding its circle of influence in Africa. Be it now the Chinese are doing it through infrastructure, but Iran is thinking of doing it through somehow what we call religious indoctrination, building mosques, Islamic universities, Islamic schools,
So,
and providing free healthcare.
so this is 100% what the current U.S. administration is doing when they're trying to promote Saudi, Israeli, Middle Eastern, European peace, is to counter that Chinese expansionism fueled by ideology and fueled by, to my way of thinking, fraud and theft of the natural resources of that entire part of the world. So if you're saying, is that happening? I'm saying, yes, it is happening, and we all have to try to counter it.
So I'm assuming that it is on the radar, basically, this sort of action being taken by Iran.
Oh, absolutely. And so let me back up for a second. The Abraham Accords started under Trump, and worse than that, they started under his real estate investor son-in-law, Gerald Kushner. And
Mhm.
so, for go with me here, I'm not done. For the Biden administration to come in and automatically hating everything that Trump did, which they would, just like Trump automatically hated everything Obama did, and to continue, notwithstanding that, to pursue the Abraham Accords, that tells me that they must think that this is one of the most important strategic initiatives in the world. And the only thing I can conclude from looking at that from the outside is that that's because this is how we countered China and Russia and Iran. And so I have no doubt that's what's happening. I'm going to go to Kelvin, then I'm going to go to Zoka, and then I have to go to sleep, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, okay. So can I talk now?
Yes, sir. Go.
All right. I want to bring back the reconstruction of Iraq. I mean, and the reconstruction of Afghanistan, which is a failure. And I do know why it's a failure because one of the things that Bush actually threw up after the war, in the aftermath of the war, is that he gave them universal suffrage without educating them about what liberal democracy is. Don't you think it's one of those prime failure that Bush administration have ever committed? Because you know what, when you try to reconstruct the Islamic world, just like you try to reconstruct Nazi Germany and Japan, don't you think you need something like a Marshall Plan, kind of like using education or pedagogical reform? Because one of the things that Islamic world is that they're socially constructed to hate the West. They wanted this form of authoritarianism, like a nanny state, to kind of like guide them. This is the kind of thing that I'm from Malaysia, so the Muslim society is like they don't believe in freedom. They believe in the guidance. Sharia basically means the path. Okay, so this is a kind of social construct that you see in the Islamic world. And do you think that a Marshall Plan could actually like kind of reconstruct the Muslim world?
Well, wow, Kelvin, you have opened a can of worms. Guys, stop thumbing down on Kelvin. He's touched on something here. Um, Colin Powell used to say, American Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State, you break it, you bought it. If you go into a country and you upheaval, that's not the right word. You overturn their system of government, then you have to take responsibility for the results. Now, it only goes so far though, Kelvin. And I would say this: whatever the faults of America are, and there are many, and we'll talk about them tomorrow night, and I hope you all come to my space. We in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and I'll debate this for hours tomorrow, felt like, and 98% of our government voted that we were doing the right thing. Now, did we know what the fuck we were doing? Did we know how to nation build, quote unquote? No, we did not. But we were in there for the right reasons. And what you're getting at is how badly we fucked up, but I don't think we own as America, I don't think we own the inability of the population of those countries to accept the olive branch and the opportunity we gave them to be democratic. Maybe it was too soon. Maybe we didn't educate them enough, but I'm not sure that's entirely our problem. We'll talk about it tomorrow night. Kelvin, I appreciate you. Zoka, go.
Thank you so much, Brian. And Brian, I wanted to
ask some question, and that is, if we look at the U.S. policy, especially the Western countries' policies against the nuclear program of Islamic Republic, we see a constant consensus against them. And if you look at the beginning, they, shut down all their, enrichment capacity, but then because of your consensus, they started it again, and the negotiation came after each other. And currently, you are in the position that wanting them to stop the enrichment in the capacity of, for example, 60% or 70% that is near to an atomic bomb. I think that in the current situation that we saw a terrorist attack inside Israel, if the Western countries had any consensus against this, the evil groups of the Islamic, terrorists, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Islamic Republic that is the head of the octopus. If you had any consensus against them, based on what we have seen inside the Western countries, the clear potential, of the troops that they have inside these countries, in the near future, perhaps the Western countries should have some negotiation about their safeties inside the countries. So that's the time that all the Western countries be behind Israel and go toward all of them, all of the terrorist groups that are unified in the Middle East, and eradicate all of them. And I think that we should consider that the octopus head is in Islamic Republic. And what is the solution for the Islamic Republic? It seems that having a kingdom inside the Iran again can bring peace in the Middle East. And I wanted to know your idea about the consensus against the Islamic Republic. It will be continued
Yeah.
or not?
Yeah, so Zoka, you should tune in tomorrow night because we're going to have a whole discussion about this. But I'm less knowledgeable and less concerned about the form of government that is taken inside of the Islamic Republic than I am what they do outside. That's what America's concern is what they do outside. So we'll talk about this tomorrow. I got to call on Ali a buzz because I saw like 100 thumbs down, and I don't even know what you're talking about. So tell us what you're talking about. Oh no, Ali a buzz. Are you not a speaker? I thought I brought you up. I'm going to invite you to speak, and then I love the thumbs down because that's where the learning happens. So I'm trying to bring you up.
Hey,
Uh,
Brian, just want to say I'm getting ready to leave. I know you're closing the space. Just want to say you did a great job today. I'll be back tomorrow. And can you just do me a small favor? Can you just please repeat after me? Long live King Reza Pahlavi.
Well, I can't do that because I don't know what it is, but I
How about
love your
I'll
spirit, buddy.
I'll
I love
make
your
it
spirit.
easier. I'll make it easier. Long live exile Crown Prince King Reza Pahlavi.
Hey, I'll walk this road with you, my brother. Long live Iran not having a nuclear weapon until they're a democracy. How about that?
50-50 deal.
All right. I just brought up someone that thumbs down me like 100 times. Are you there? I can't even remember who it was, but I brought you up.
I recently thumbs down, but it wasn't. I don't believe it was to you. I believe it was your previous speaker. I don't know if that was me, but you did bring me up recently.
It
So.
Yeah,
was a
just
bot. It
speak,
had
speak,
no
speak,
followers.
speak, speak.
That was a troll from the Islamic Republic farm, and his thumbs down was towards the fact that people were advocating for a free democratic Iran. Fuck him. I was gonna warn you, but my phone rang,
All
so sorry.
right,
Oh
fair
yeah,
enough.
no, I'm with the free democratic Iran. Please, let's get more democracy in the Middle East. All right, that's why we gotta support Israel.
Yeah, but let me ask you a question though. How when these
Okay,
internal
thank you guys. I'm gonna go. Thank you, Brian, for holding these spaces. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Let me ask the last speaker, unless we lost him. Um, when there's the next popular uprising in Iran, what is the most appropriate and helpful role for the U.S.? Should we shut up? Should we support you? What should we do?
I think the United States should support their own interests, like they always do.
Democracy is another form of tyranny.
Absolutely. Democracy turns to mobocracy,
Exactamundo.
which turns
All
into
right.
anarchy.
All right, you guys. Helsinki, what do you think?
Yeah, just I wanted to ask a question. Sorry, I was a little bit distracted by
No, no,
work.
no. Speak up.
Yeah. So about the Iran thing, I was just, it's okay we support these progressive forces in Iran, but I don't know. I think they are up against quite stiff resistance there. So I am all for supporting this diaspora who are residing outside of Iran to support their struggle. But I just worry a lot about the issue that we did this in many places. So West did this in Libya. We did this in many places, and then the aftermath was total disaster. Look at Iraq. Look at Libya. Syria also. We didn't respect our own red lines. So the thing is that, okay, if we indeed, or if the opposition in Iran would somehow miraculously defeat the mullah and the rev guards, what would come after? Is there any
Yeah.
certainty that they will become like progressive liberal government there, or there would be some sort of like this mech lunatics or somebody else? This is kind of my worry, just to be
Yeah.
frank.
Yeah, you're totally right, Helsinki. Is it going to be Thomas Jefferson or is it going to be Adolf Hitler? And how do you think, and I'll throw this open to the room, how do you think uh, the countries who, feel like they have a global responsibility, how do you think we should deal with that? Talking about the UK, the US, I mean, if you want to say Russia, how do we should we ever pick winners and losers or not? That's my question.
Dan, you know what? Hello? Yeah. What's going to happen is that,
We hear you.
the project after World War II about liberal international order, why don't we just throw everything under the bus, and get rid of it? Then the idea of liberal democracy is all gone if we just give it all up.
So you're saying don't give it all up.
Yeah, don't give it all up. We need to fight for that, for the whole
I
world.
I agree with you, but how do we? I agree with you full stop.
I'm
But
not
how
I'm
do
not
we
saying I'm not
make
saying
those
we can do it all
decisions?
in one night. I'm not saying we can do it all in one day, one night, or anything, but I just tell you that we have to do this incrementally and never to struggle to fight for all human rights around the world. The global south, as far as I'm concerned, I came from a global south, Malaysia. Okay, is not really democracy, it's semi-authoritarian, and Singapore too. So you know what? To let this go on is it's not going to support liberal international order. So what's the use of liberal international order to begin with?
Spread the Bill of Rights everywhere.
He's talking like
You
the
know, you
Bretton
know,
Woods
you know,
Agreement.
guys. I'm gonna crash in a couple of minutes because it's almost 3 a.m. here. But I think we've hit on the fundamental question, which I hope we'll all think about and come back in my space tomorrow night and bring 100 friends each. And that is this: we are now challenged, all of us, whether we're 61 like me or 21 like some of you,
73.
with or even old or 81 or 91 or 101. We're all challenged with what comes next. Clearly, the world where the United States and the UK and the Western Alliance are facing off against the USSR and the Soviet bloc, that's gone. I know there's a whole movement to have BRIC be a thing. I don't think that's actually going to be a thing. I predict that. But what is the world order in the 21st century? And this is not hypothetical. And it's not hypothetical because Vladimir Putin, if he's still alive, and by the way, I'm going to put my marker down right now 45%, 55%. That guy's already dead. But if he's still alive, he's watching, Xi Jinping is watching, Tehran is watching. We're looking at the next world order that's going to control the 21st century. And we have to, basically put our chips on, do we want Western democracy or do we want dictatorship? And that's where we sit. And I invite you all to think about that and to come back
Don't
tomorrow
forget
night.
North
Bring all
Korea.
manufacturing and
North
Yep.
Korea
production
too.
back to the USA.
Okay. You throw that in there too. But let's think about what we want the next 100 years to look like. And let's talk about it tomorrow night. Join my space. Good night,
Guten
everybody.
Abend.
Good night.
Good night.